The White House has expressed a lot of hope. They feel that they're coming close to an end. Now, I know I've said that a few times over the last few months, but it is normal in these types of negotiations for them to be very touch and go. The thing that you've had now is, just to explain, is that they've agreed on this outline, this general outline that President Biden put forward at the end of May, as you noted, and that outline they remain in agreement on. But the way it works from there is that they have to agree on every single little detail, and those details are what are, not only are they getting hung up on those details, but as time wears on, each side comes with new demands. So time is not really on their side on this one, except this time there is a lingering aspect in the background, and that's this potential assault attack that we're all waiting for, coming from Iran and Hezbollah. And a deal on this ceasefire could actually thwart that attack and put it entirely to the side, which would be, really, huge and really kind of win-win all around. But that said, the details of such, and I can go into a few of them. For example, they're arguing on the phases of hostages who should be released, and first would be women and remaining children, and then men and soldiers, and so they're arguing over those phases. That Israel doesn't like the phases that Hamas is putting forward on that. Israel wants to have a military presence along the border between Gaza and Egypt, and Hamas is now against that. So there are things like that. Israel wants to set up checkpoints inside Gaza to check on people, to weed out militants. Hamas doesn't like that. So there are these details, that things of this kind that aren't in that broader outline, that they're trying to figure out now. And by the way, that's the similar process, whether it's a ceasefire or a peace negotiation. And so it's very common, but unfortunately, you're talking about two sides who have deep distrust on both ends. And Israel's goal at the end of the day is not the same as the United States' goal. Their goal ultimately is to defeat Hamas completely. And I think that they feel that that's not there yet. And Hamas knows that. So they're afraid that even after a ceasefire, Israel would resume some kind of violence. And so that's also in the background here.
Hagar, there's a belief that the release of the hostages, still more than 100 living and dead hostages held in Gaza, cannot be secured militarily. Do you believe that?
Oh, I do believe that. I mean, after October 7, when so many hostages were taken in, knowing how brutal Hamas is and the conditions in Gaza, and I knew that the response from Israel was going to be severe and that the conditions would then worsen in Gaza, I always thought that their lives were really pretty much, the lives of the hostages were hanging by a thread. But I think that's especially more evident now. And proof of that is the fact that now you have Gaza's entire population, almost the entire population of 2.3 million people, have been displaced and have had to continue to move many times. And so you have hostages in the mix of that. You obviously have water and food issues and medicine issues. And I believe the Israeli government came out saying that it's believed that only half or a third of those hostages, it's about 115 left, are still alive. And so that's why you have increasing pressure inside Israel. You have had protests today, knowing that these talks are taking place in Doha. The families of the hostages are protesting, saying that they don't want the negotiators to return without a deal. And of course, they've said that before, but they really mean it this time, because they know that time is of the essence for these hostages. But the U.S., what they're trying to convey is, hey, Israel, you have defeated Hamas significantly, to the point where we don't believe they could actually pose a significant threat to you or govern Gaza. And therefore, it's time to get the hostages back. And if you want to focus on continuing to undermine Hamas, it has to be with these very specific targeted operations that kill leaders, as you saw in Iran and in Lebanon. And that is, by the way, where I think the war is headed anyway. So that's what the U.S. is trying to convey is, listen, you're not going to find any more opportunities to bomb your way out of this. And you're only going to find yourself endangering way too many civilians. It's time to move on, to release the hostages and move to the next phase of this.
Well, as you allude to, the assassinations, the strikes against these leaders in Beirut and Tehran, we are still waiting the response from Hezbollah or Iran or both on that front. Hagar, what is your expectation? The longer we wait, does it indicate the strike against Israel, the retaliation, is only going to be more severe? Or does it suggest one might not be coming at all?
The longer we wait, the more it implies that they are waiting to see what happens with the ceasefire talks, because Iran has something to gain out of these ceasefire talks as well. We have to remember that you have now a huge presence, a U.S. military presence in the region, and that's been doubled down by the U.S. Defense Department, right? Another submarine was sent in, another carrier was sent in. We have U.S. presence all across the region. And Iran and Hezbollah, no, they don't. They want to respond, but they don't want to enter a war into any kind of engagement with the United States. And they've made that very clear. They want, it seems, a repeat of April, where you had 300 drones and missiles launched by Iran. All of them were successfully intercepted except one or two, and Israel responded, but then every side retreated. And that's kind of my expectation for the next assault. But now that we've gone this far, they've waited this long, and we have these ceasefire talks, my expectation is they're definitely holding on until they see how those ceasefire talks happen. And we'll know more at the end of the weekend, because it's really today and Friday that are the peak of these talks, apparently, according to the White House at least. And then if those talks falter, then I would expect this assault that we've all been waiting for to actually happen. But if there's some glimmer of light, then a glimmer of hope, I would expect them to retreat a little bit, because at the end of the day, any engagement with the United States, anything that undermines the Iranian regime in general at a time where their own people are against the regime, it threatens their power. It threatens their existence altogether. And so they're aware of that. So that's what I expect. We're not going to see anything until these ceasefire talks are over. At least we know what direction they're taking.